basically, sales, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the most important traits that there are when it comes to business, development, money making, even life. Like, why is it, in your opinion, why are sales so damn important?
Yeah, you're spot on with sales. You as an inventor, as an entrepreneur, you're your company's first salesperson. That would be important to the success of your company long term because you're your company's only advocate, if you will, when you start off.
Right.
So sales plays a huge role in that. It helps with building relationships and building your company's name around. And I do believe that your company's future success depends on how well you sell your product when you first start out.
I heard an amazing phrase. I don't know where it was. And if I wasn't so lazy, I would have done the research. But you're always selling yourself. Sales is so important because no matter if you're in an interview for Kentucky Fried Chicken or you want to be a data analyst, even when you meet women at the bar, when you meet your wife, you're selling. When you're trying to negotiate what time the kids should go to bed, you're selling. Like, selling is so important. I want to tell you a quick story. I might have mentioned to you, but I sold solar panels for 2 weeks. That was as far as I could make it. I'll never forget when I quit, a guy slammed the door in my face and I called my dad crying saying I couldn't do it anymore. But even though I only did that for 2 weeks, those 2 weeks made such an impact on me. This was 7, 8 years ago. I still, to this day, I think that was the most influential information that I gained. And it was being resilient and it was coming back and it was showing up for those sales. That's a different type of sale, though. Like, that's hardcore.
Yeah, I would agree with any salesperson. They'll have a story like that where it was kind of a brutal no, if you will. And being in sales, you get used to hearing no's quite often. And how you deal with the no's are how you're going to succeed, essentially. So you could take the no, you could quit, you could never do it again, or you could take the no, build upon what you might have done wrong or how your approach was maybe off in some sort of way and tailor it to get the yes the next time or the next 20 times or however long it takes to get that yes.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard when you first start off.
Yeah. Now, the flip side of sales, it's very, very rewarding. I think it's like the only career where you have the opportunity to almost have some sort of stake in the company you're working for. Am I right? Is that the feeling that it kind of gives? I know that's the hope as a business owner, as you bring in salespeople and you're like, yeah, let's all fight the good fight. Let's pull in for the big win.
Yeah, that feeling you get when you do get the yeses, I can't kind of liken it to winning a lottery, if you will. Based on how many times you hear the word no, you kind of become accustomed to hearing no's and accepting that no's are just how it's going to be. You're going to get rejected. But on the flip side, like you mentioned, getting that yes makes you feel like you've done something important, not only for your company, but also as a person. You feel accomplished in your goals, and it does propel the next couple of months, weeks, years, whatever it is, to propel you to keep going in sales and keep taking those no's until you get the yeses. It's a good feeling.
Right. And then another thing about sales is it's one of the very few careers where somebody with little to no college education and only a year or two of experience could potentially make six figures.
Yeah, spot on. There's no sales major as far as I'm aware of in college. And there are certainly aspects you could take from each major in college that might help. But from personal experience, I was a political science major, kind of nothing to do with sales really. But like I said, you can kind of pick and choose aspects of the major that make you successful, whether it's speaking out loud in front of a classroom or giving a presentation of some sort. But then you could also find real life examples of that. And I don't think college is the only way to kind of get into sales, if you will.
Gotcha. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so there's no tried and true hard-stead path to get into sales. It's a trade. It's almost like a trade. You know, when I was growing up, it was like you learn how to do electrical or you learn how to do drywall. And you don't really go to college for that kind of stuff because you're just going to learn a lot more, a lot faster, getting your hands dirty.
100%. And on that point, my dad was a lifelong salesperson, if you will. So as far as I can remember, he was in sales in the kitchen industry. So I was able to go with him on many sales calls, small clients, small businesses, medium clients, large hotel chains, all the different various clients you'd have in your sales career. And from a very young age, you kind of learn how you approach these kind of conversations, how the trade of sales works, if you will. And you eventually realize it's not much about the product you're selling, because if there's a product market fit, you're selling yourself. You're selling your person to another company and saying, this is what you'll receive with our product. And it becomes a more collaborative approach rather than, hey, we got the best product, we have the best pricing. It doesn't really matter at that point. It
doesn't really come down to price.
No.
Price is kind of irrelevant as long as things make sense.
Exactly.
So you're kind of like you're I don't know. It's an art, man. It's an art and a craft. It's the main reason that Torkstrap hired you is because you need someone who is a specialist in the field, and you need someone who's fully committed to that mindset. It's hard to put on your social media hat, pop that off, and then put on your sales hat. It's hard to put on your engineering hat and then flip on your sales flip-flops. It's just too... You can, as a business owner, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to be a master of none. But eventually, at one point, you have to make that first decision. Who do I hire first to help me move this business forward? And until you and I met, I hadn't really made the connection, but it just clicked. Sales is number one. And it's proven true over the last 3 or 4 months that it's just an immeasurable benefit to the company.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners will seek out a head of sales or a director of sales when they first start out. It's an easy way to kind of gauge where your product is at in terms of the market fit, and it's an easy way to generate some revenue as well. That's certainly an aspect to hiring your first salesperson. And not only that, you're an up-and-coming brand. You want a person, like you said, to advocate for your brand, and that becomes key as well. And in that instance, it's less about the product. While the product is great, while Torkstraps are great, you're building a brand. You're not just building one single product, and that's very important.
Yeah. So we've talked about how great sales can be. If sales are so great, if I could graduate high school and in a couple of years be making $200,000 a year, why isn't everybody doing it?
Good question. No, it goes back to your earlier point when you kind of mentioned when you first started off in solar. I think solar is a good example of a tough sell. There's a lot of companies that sell solar. There's a lot of door knockers, if you will. They come to your door and they hear no all day long. And eventually, if you do it long enough, you kind of learn to go with the punches. However, the period of time where you are learning to accept that not everyone likes your product, not everyone will like you, that's a very challenging thing to go through for potentially a lot of young people, myself included. I can guarantee you there's pretty much every salesperson that exists in the world that has thought at some point, maybe sales isn't right for me. I can guarantee it because I've done it. I've done it myself quite a few times. And when you first start out, you don't see the value of what you can gain when you are successful at sales or when you do become successful at sales. But oftentimes it is hard to kind of reach that point.
Definitely. Yeah, man. I mean, and you touched on it. The solar sales are like a worst case scenario of sales. I'm glad I did that because it was like trial by fire, really going through the gauntlet. You can only go up from there. But the point I'm getting at is not all sales have to be so fast-paced and sleazy and scumbaggy, right? When I met you, you did not come off as a quintessential stereotypical salesman to me. What you came off to me was a business professional. So what's the difference between the greasy style and the relaxed style?
Yeah, if you're lucky enough to start off in a business professional setting in your sales career, you kind of learn the tricks and trades of the art of the deal. You're going to learn how to schmooze with a customer, for lack of better terms. But for me, my personal experience was kind of starting off as a super low level salesperson at a dental supply company. I have no dental background whatsoever, and I couldn't tell you, I couldn't name a single instrument inside a dental office. But when you first start off in sales, they essentially give you a list of leads. So you have hundreds and hundreds of in this case, dental offices that I would call into and pitch my services. And at the time, I was working for a company that, they prided themselves on being the lowest price. So that was my get into these dental offices. As you slowly progress and my career progressed, I started selling more tech-related software into law firms and into the legal market space. And you learn that it's not about price. Lawyers pretty much can afford any software or product that they would like. It comes down to your services and your person. So you kind of see a transition, or I've seen a transition in my own career, going from that sleazy sales guy, if you will, progressing to larger deal sizes. That factors into it. Longer sales cycles. So when I started off, my sales cycle could have been a day. I could have called someone up on the phone and they would have bought with me on the spot. Going down the line, you're going to take, sometimes 6 months, 8 months to close a deal, and you have to remain resilient the whole time. You have to put your checks in place, your follow-throughs in place, and make sure that the customer is still on board and we're still doing the best we can for the customer in the meantime. So your mindset kind of shifts from going from, hey, we need to be the cheapest product, getting into these dental offices, then we'll sell to them, into this is the best solution for your company. This is why I'm a part of that solution. This is why I'm good at this. So it was kind of a natural progression for me, but I know there are salespeople who have started off in that more business professional setting, but I've had the advantage of kind of doing both. So
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's cool to see that distinction. Because sales doesn't have to be greasy. Sales doesn't have to be, as you just said, telling people the best price.
Yep.
Sales isn't throwing up banners and giving 20% off.
Mm-hmm.
That's not sales. Sales is proving value. If someone believes that this will save them money in the long run or make their life easier, they'll buy it.
Yeah.
It's pretty much that simple.
Spot on.
There are very few instances where they wouldn't buy, and those are unforeseen, and you're never going to overcome those anyway. But another interesting thing you were talking about is what I heard is that sales is a long game. You're nurturing deals that may not pay out for a couple months, 6 months plus sometimes. Whereas a turn and burn car salesman, he's looking to get paid. He's looking to close the day they walk into the dealership. That's their policy.
Right.
Your policy in a business professional environment is, how can I meet all your needs? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to focus on meeting your needs. And that's the money's a byproduct from there.
Yeah.
So when you start a business, when you develop a product, and when you're ready to move it, in my opinion, there's two types of sales. Stephen, you and I deal with this every day. I run sales on the social media side, the revenue, there's the keep the money kind of rolling kind of side, and you run larger scale sales where you're tracking down big fish who are going to be repeat buyers for months and months. So my job in sales is to understand what makes people convert from browsers to buyers on a massive level. Not like big, but on a rapid repeating level. We may have 100 people come to the store, but only 2.5, 3 of them buy. That's where my understanding of, okay, what videos are making them convert, what language on the website is making them convert. And it can be as simple as your checkout is too hard to find, or your checkout asks too many damn questions. It can be as complex as, you didn't go viral on social media because you didn't start with the proper hook to your video, so your audience fell off 3 seconds in and they didn't see the ending at 8 seconds in. Mm-hmm. So with that, I think it's interesting the dynamic you have to build between, short-term sales, turn and burn, keep the money flowing, to looking ahead to the future. So when you look ahead to the future, when you look for longevity in clients, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so I personally look for a strong partner, and that doesn't necessarily mean money. It certainly is a portion of what we look for in a distributor, for example. But a long-term partner would mean an advocate for you when you're not able to be there. Now, they don't have to be your number one salesperson. You don't have to, they don't have to be under your employ, but they have to get the product. They have to get the message of our company, and they have to be able to understand you as the person and how you communicate, and it works both ways. So you're going to want to have a strong line of communication with your distributors. You never want to leave things up in the air. You don't want to be a bad business person and kind of leave people out in the dark until you're ready to do whatever you want. I believe in honesty is the best policy, and I'm going to be upfront with as many people as possible when dealing with them. But a long-term partner is solid. It's key in growing your business abroad. In our instance, when we approach people on other continents, we've never met them. We've never had the chance to meet them. However, there's that strong communication. They're brand advocates, and they get the message. And I think those three things are key.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, so let's bring it back to what would provide most value for our listeners. In our ideal scenario, our listeners have been following the podcast. They've found manufacturers. They've locked down their provisional patent. They've even got their shipment landed in their garage. They got 1,000 pieces, and they don't know what to do with them. Now, I'll speak on, you can put them on Amazon, and that's good and great. I guarantee you'll move a couple units a day. You're going to feel a little bit stuck for a while. Stay with it. That's fine. That will start to build. Get that going in the background. You can start a Shopify store and try to drive traffic there yourself. If you're just starting social media accounts, I'll be honest, you can look at maybe getting 300-400 views a video unless you do really well and go viral. So you're not going to get a ton of traffic on your website. You're going to be frustrated the first 3 to 6 months. No doubt. So if I had 1,000 Torkstraps, Steven, and you were my neighbor and you're like, hey man, I'm down. Let's just see what we can do. If you were trying to move 1,000 Torkstraps, where would you start?
Good question. The internet's going to be your best friend. So you're going to want to come up with some sort of plan in your immediate area, I would say. So depending on the product, of course, Torkstrap's kind of applicable to a lot of different industries and different kind of consumers. So we have an advantage in that way. But let's just say, for example, we didn't. You are going to want to know your product inside out. You're going to want to find that product market fit. Once you identify the market, you just go after it. And now going after it can mean many different things. It could be Googling, companies or people within the area that specialize in a specific sort of product that in a market that your product fits, and going after them, meaning calling, emailing, some sort of way to get their attention and alert them to your product. Now, that is easier said than done. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of tedious work. You'd have to be organized. You have to organize your leads in a specific way that you know when to follow up with them, when you reached out to them at the first point, and kind of start building a relationship. Now, when you start out, you could call 100 businesses in your local area that, they would be the perfect client for your product. I can almost guarantee you may hear back from 1 or 2 of them in a couple of months span. Now, you can, once again, choose to just, take those as no's and move on and go to the next city, go to the next town, the state, whatever it is. Or you kind of nurture that relationship, and that's where your inner salesperson kicks in. Revamp your approach, see what you did wrong, maybe potentially visiting them in person and seeing, if you could get a sample of the product into their hands to show the value of the product. It's not easy. It's never going to be easy, but that's kind of how you start out.
But an interesting note that you brought up just then was local businesses and the way that they procure products. I honestly didn't know how that whole system worked. I walked into a bike shop. I said, all this stuff on your shelves, did you buy that? And he goes, yeah, we bought that wholesale and we have to resell it. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, wow, that is a massive amount of overhead that you put on your shelves. So in other words, a retailer, let's say, for example, a bike shop, they're trying to buy a chain and sprocket set for bikes for maybe it retails for $59.99. They're trying to buy it for about $30 so that they can turn around and flip it and sell it for $60.
Sure.
And it costs them a lot of money to make that sale. You know, that's not all profit. They got to keep the lights on. They got to have salespeople in their store who know how to sell the chain and sprockets. Point I'm getting at is you have to convince business owners that when you buy this from me, you're going to be able to turn this around in a reasonable amount of time to where you're going to be able to pay your bills at the end of the month, and you're going to come back to us and say, we need more. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
If you have an existing product that you've improved upon, that's cool because let's say you have pickleballs and they bounce 10% better and they have 5% better spin. Arguable differences, but it's true. And you know that and you believe that. When you try to sell those pickleballs into stores, you have to be sure that the end seller has a way to prove to his customers. He can't just say, oh, well, Steven told me they bounce 10% better. That's not good enough. Your packaging has to show it. Your packaging has to convey it. You have to inspire belief in that fact. Yep. So I'm getting on a tangent here, but what I want the viewers to know is don't underestimate the mom and pop shops in your neighborhood. Just know they have to make their nut too. Everybody's got, you got to grease every hand involved in the transaction. And yes, your bottom line gets more and more diluted. But let me ask you this. Would you rather sell 1 million units where you make $2 a unit or 5 units where you make $50 a unit? There's a huge difference in those numbers. And that's the power of a good sales plan.
Yep.
So, Steven, how long have you been in sales?
So I'm closing in on about 5 years now.
5 years. It's relatively a short amount of time in the scheme of careers.
Yeah.
But has that held you back, do you think?
Not at all. You could have asked me, my first year of sales, whether I'm going to stick with it or not. I could have told you yes, with a few instances of, I'm never doing this again. But overall, overarching sentiment is that it's fun. You learn to, if you do like talking to people, this is kind of the job for you. You get to talk to various different people, many different backgrounds, and you kind of learn to love what you do in that sense. And it becomes a different challenge, a different, puzzle you're trying to solve every single day. And I know we always joke about this, but we kind of have a different challenge to take care of every single day, whether it's on the sales side or anything related to Torkstrap. But it's exciting. It's fun. It keeps you, on your toes. You're not just going to be sitting at a desk all day and mindlessly doing a specific task that you might not enjoy. That's not enjoyable for a lot of people, but it's exciting. I don't think time in a specific career determines whether you're going to like it or not, but you can have a good gauge at around the 2-3 year mark. And, I'm sold on sales for the rest of my life, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Now let's talk about what people really want to know when it comes to sales is money and getting paid. I think that, it's pretty standard for a salesperson to be paid hopefully a base and then commission on top of that. Mm-hmm. And commission can range from 1% to 30%. Commission very much depends on I'll let you speak to this more, but just to get it going, I think it depends on the labor in the sale, right? How much you have to nurture that deal, how much profit there is on the product. Software products, they have a really high margin. There's overhead, don't get me wrong, but you're able to get a high margin, so you're able to turn and burn and cut more checks and frequently. Mm-hmm. And then other things like selling a car, I don't know what a salesman makes on a car sale. Do you? I mean,
I think it varies from dealer to dealer, but I know it's not a lot, and that's why they oftentimes focus on volume rather than, selling one really great car or a few really great cars. I know volume is a big aspect of that.
Right. So you casually closed a $20,000 deal this morning. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
That's awesome, but it's no big deal for you. That's just what you do, and that's part of the game. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that you made a 5% commission on that deal. You just made yourself a cool G just like that. And you didn't make it bending over backwards. You weren't busting your hump, but you were being diligent. I think organization was the key.
Yeah.
And when you can line up 5 or 6 ducks in a row and nail them all down in the same month, you can have a very lucrative month.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of sales. I think that's really cool.
It is. And that's part of the motivating factor for someone like me who didn't specialize in anything in college. And you kind of leave college and you're like, what do I do? What do I do to make money? And being in sales, I think it affords you quite a bit more opportunity to make more money with the commission aspect. So I think there's a good amount of companies. I'm willing to bet that it's in the 90th percentile of companies that offer some sort of base salary and then the commission. Being in sales for just a year or two, you kind of realize your commission is where you actually make your money. Your base salary typically covers your rent, your mortgage, whatever daily living expenses you have. And your commission could really essentially be your sales plan. You saving to buy a house, you stack up all your commission money. It's all extra money at the end of the day. And going back to your point about margins and what type of commissions you get, it's really going to come down to your industry, like you mentioned. So selling software, you do have a great margin. You're going to probably be paid a higher base salary and a higher commission than most industries. But that doesn't mean to say, you shouldn't get into sales at all at the lower end. If there is a lower base, oftentimes you just have to work a little bit harder to get those higher commissions. And I've been on both sides of this table where I've had a pretty low base, and it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of intention in your job, but you do achieve that number that you want to achieve on the commission side of things. As you kind of move along your career, and I'm sure this is valid in many different areas of different careers, if you will, you don't really necessarily get paid based on how much time it takes you to do something. You get paid on how you handle a situation. So $20,000 was great, but I've done that so many times that it kind of feels second nature, if you will. You kind of get in your flow of your sales flow, if you will. You're doing your follow-ups, you're doing your due diligence on the client and the customer. And when it pays off, it's a great feeling. But for me, it's just get back to the next one. Get back to work. We'll get a 40K sale next time, hopefully. It's kind of that growing mindset. You want to celebrate your little wins and then keep it going.
Right. See, that's something that you had the wherewithal and the determination to execute on, that is a prime example of something I never could have done. And if I had spent my time or my energy hunting down that $20,000 deal, I would have slipped up with my manufacturer and I would have sent a 9-inch dimension when it was supposed to be 9 1/4, and I would have ruined a $30,000 shipment on our loading dock for next month.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to give that up. Like, don't be afraid to give up parts of your business. You're never going to make 100% profit. If you think I saw this so much in my hometown, and you even see it at farmers markets and stuff. People make things out of wood, and they do it themselves. So they buy the wood, they bring it in the shop, they shape it, they route it, they carve it. Then they drive it over to the farmer's market and they set up the displays. I mean, they've got hours and hours. And you wonder why, somebody's little knick-knack maple board painted as the American flag, why they're charging $150. They're still not making money on that because they've got hours and hours into that. Now, when they make that $150, yeah, that's all profit, but how much time did you miss out with the kids? Now, not knocking them. I know people like that do it for the joy of doing it. But the point I'm getting at is you're never going to make 100% profit. You have to be willing to split and share, and you have to find what motivates people, what motivates your sales force, what motivates your customer service, what motivates your accountant to get the numbers right. You have to be willing to bend to that. And every step you take, you have to ask yourself, is this helping me hit a wider customer base? Because that's what it comes down to. every time you expand, you cut down on your profit, but you also increase your bottom line, and you can pay those employees more money. You can profit share at that point, and then they're going to work harder for you. And it's a compounding effect. I think it's so, so, so important for new inventors to understand that you have to give up pieces of that pie, but it's a very big pie, and everybody's going to be fed.
Yeah, and props to you for realizing that so early in the relatively early in the company's existence, if you will. It takes a lot of forethought on your end to kind of imagine what you want your company to look like and going for it. We say it all the time here. You just try something. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, get back to the drawing board and start over. And I think you've done a great job with, not only leading this company, but also being open to trying new things. And that's what it comes down to a lot of times.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah. I'm new at this too, guys. If you're listening, you've been following along. I've been in business for about 3 years, and they say read books. It's true. They say listen to other people's war stories. It's true. Take note of everything you hear. Marcus and I, we took the punches so that you don't have to. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the show. We've been running for about, 36 minutes. That's a pretty good show. So I want to thank everybody for joining with us today. Remember to like and subscribe, follow the show on whatever platform you might be on, and keep at it, because at the end of the day, we took the punches so that you don't have to. So take from this, learn from it, and we'll see you guys on the next one.